Recording.
Okay, this is a special meeting of the Saratoga Springs Public Library Board of Trustees. Welcome. This is to discuss the strategic plan for the year 2021 to 2024. Ike?
All right, thanks, Frank. To get started, I just wanted to give everybody a little bit of a reminder, a background of how we got to this point. Our strategic planning process, as you know, for those on the board and the staff, has been underway for about a year and a half ago. It started, we were about to start some meetings in person with the community back in March of 2020, just before the world was upended and we had to take a pivot and approach it a different way. The process actually started well before that with some internal discussions among staff, with a staff committee to help us to identify some stakeholders for a variety of focus groups that we had planned. And at around the same time, we were designing a community survey regarding the library, the community, et cetera. And in order to gather input from the community about library services and the needs of the community and how we might meet them. As I said, everything kind of pivoted back in March, and we had to take a new tack and sort of deliver everything that we were doing this way via Zoom rather than in person. And a few things happened simultaneously. So back in the fall of 2020, we issued a community survey that was designed by our consultants from Rethinking Libraries, who were known under a different name at that point, Kimberly Boland and Associates. They had a change of name during the course of this. At that point, they were anticipating that with a community our size and with the number of registered borrowers we have, et cetera, that if we got 100 responses to our survey, that we would be doing well. As it turned out, we got 10 times that many. Ultimately, 1,014 people responded to the survey. So there was some great data that came from that. While those results were coming in December and January, we ultimately rescheduled December of 2020. In January of this year, we rescheduled those in-person focus groups that we had planned for the spring earlier this year. And there were a number of those focusing on a variety of topics, including youth and education, equity, diversity and inclusion, economic and community development, services for seniors, sustainability, a session with community leaders, a session devoted to issues around homelessness and poverty, and a few sessions of library employees to get an internal view from this. Following those focuses, so a lot of groups, a lot of input from the community, both through the survey and through those focus groups. Based on that data and from people who were identified who from the community who had attended those focus groups, there were ultimately two retreat sessions, what was called a mini retreat and then a more thorough retreat, again via Zoom. Many hours of staff, trustee, and community time were devoted to those retreats, which there were 5 sessions. Like I said, there were library staff, trustees, community representatives. And based on the input from all of those meetings, we had a sort of an initial rough draft of this high-level plan that was shared with trustees and with staff back in April. There's been since then a little bit of back and forth on some wordsmithing, on refining some ideas, and ultimately that back and forth has got us to where we are today. And so what we have now is a plan a draft plan, which looks a little bit different from plans that we've developed in the past, which were very much tied to what we call output measures. So things like circulation, program attendance, things that are counted to pivot more toward what we refer to as outcome measures. So things that may be intangible, but that result in a sort of a change, a systemic change, a change in attitudes, a change in knowledge, et cetera. So that may be a little less quantifiable. Also, the plan has fewer focus areas than a plan does for us traditionally, and that's by design for a few reasons. One is it's a relatively short period. We are coming out of a time of turmoil, and we hope to have a plan that, yes, we can get some results from, but that it also allows us some flexibility so that if we need to pivot again, like we've had to do many times over the last year and a half, the plan allows us the flexibility to do that. So that's a little bit of background. I don't know if there at this point, if there are any questions about how we got to where we are in this. Nope, all righty. So we'll move on to mission, vision, and value. So these are three things that we look at every time we go through a planning process. And to give people a little bit of definition of what we mean by these things in this context. So our vision is really our sort of our aspiration for the community. And in this case, we've rewritten our division. So one thing that we tried to do, and by design in this round of planning, is our vision, mission, and value statements to try to shorten them. Our last planning process was really more about storytelling, and so we had many sentences in our vision, mission, and value statement. This time, it's really more about shortening them. With the notion that maybe they come a little more trippingly off the tongue, they're easily recited, and maybe we get a bulleted list. So to back up a little bit, so our vision is aspirational for the community. So in this, we have decided that our vision is a resilient community that's empowered by collaboration, engagement, and learning. And to give you a little bit of background about some of the discussion of the vision statement is that last time our plan was all about sustainability, and that was a notion that was baked throughout the plan. That's still in this plan, but for this 3-year period, what we're aiming for, and we had gone back and forth about the word resilient versus the word sustainable in our vision statement. And right now, we feel like our community, our country, our world is in a position that we don't really want to sustain. We want to rebound from this crisis that we're undergoing. And so we have a vision this go around of resiliency, of overcoming rather than sustaining at this point. And so that's how that word, we used to highlight that word in our vision. Our mission is what we do. So it's the day-to-day stuff that we do that's in service of our aspirational vision of the community. So our mission, in the way it's proposed here, is delivering resources and experiences that engage, entertain, educate, and empower our entire community. So another notion that you'll find baked throughout the plan this time around, in addition to that sustainability, one aspect of sustainability, which we look at in sort of a three-legged stool with environmental, economic, and then sort of a social justice lens, is that we really serve everybody. And so we hope that that notion is obvious in this new iteration of our mission statement. And our values, before, as I said, was a paragraph. Now we have an enumerated list, which we think is a little bit easier to pick out the key words here. And you'll see sustainability is right at the top, equity, diversity, and inclusion. So these are two things that really, our last plan was all about. The first thing on this list, sustainability, that's something that we do want to carry forward. And equity, diversity, and inclusion is an area that we want to drill down more deeply in, examining what we do, how we do it, and why we do it. And the values, as just to back up a little bit. So if the vision is our aspiration, the mission is what we do, the values really are the guiding principles for the work that we do. So sustainability, equity, diversity, and inclusion, collaboration and partnerships, community, accessibility, learning, innovation, and I'll back up to devotion. And devotion is a word that we went back and forth on, trying to find the right word that we thought really conveyed the emotion that we feel in the work that we do. It really is an emotional connection. We played with words like dedication, joy. It's fun what we do, it's hard what we do, but really we circled back to this word devotion, because really institutionally, personally, all of us, we feel devoted to being of service to our community. So I don't know if there were any questions or comments about the vision, mission, and values. As they're proposed here.
Well, being part of the process, I think it's really good. I like it a lot.
Great. Thanks, Rick. So we'll move on to the plan itself. And as I said, it looks a little bit different from our previous plans, which, our last plan, I think, had 10 service priorities. Now we've boiled it down to 4 sort of strategic focus areas. And just to give everybody a little bit of background about the plan that we're looking at today is different from a work plan. So this is more of a high level notional plan. This is not necessarily abstract, but it is the high level plan that's going to guide us in the day-to-day work. And so the day-to-day working stuff will be more of an internal document with the things that we do in service of these focus areas. So we'll go through the focus areas here. First is universally accessible. So there was lots of discussion in all of these formats, whether they were through the survey, through the focus groups, through the retreat sessions, that we have a real focus on making our offerings, our spaces, our programs accessible to everybody in the community. So some things to pull out. What does this mean is that we offer something for everyone within the community. We ensure that spaces exist for all different types of needs for the way people use the library, use the services that we provide. Part 2 of that is that the community knows what we have and that users have convenient and welcome access to the resources, and that all services take an equity, diversity, and inclusion view within the community. So that is that we're designing our services, access to our spaces, so that as much as we can and as much as it is possible, that they're accessible to everyone in our service area. Which, as a reminder to everyone, is the Saratoga Springs City School District, which is 110 square miles stretching from Lake Desolation to Saratoga Lake and from Wilton to Milton. So community leadership, and this is a little bit of a step up and maybe a counterpoint to item number 4 here. You'll see community convener. And so under community leadership, some things to call out there. What this means is making equity, diversity, and inclusion really an integrated part of our organizational culture and our approach to services. That we take a leading role on sustainability education and demonstrating that through our actions. And that we're better positioned to help the community through a pandemic or other crisis in the future, should something else come up. And that we take a leadership role versus a facilitator role, which is sort of the community convener. So this is a step up from, well, just jump down here to community convener. What that means is, in many ways, what we already do, offering a neutral ground for difficult conversations to happen, offering collections, programs, services that are not necessarily neutral in their content, but that respond to multiple points of view. To be a safe space for people, no matter what their worldview is, what their place in our community is, to have access to library resources and experiences. And part of the way we do that is to offer community rooms. We have 400 organizations that are registered to use our community rooms. What the community leadership part of it does is takes that notion a little step further, from being a place where individual organizations can come and use our spaces, attend our programs, et cetera, to connecting these organizations together and connecting them to the mission of the library, so that when there are organizations using our spaces, resources, et cetera, where we have a sense that there's a shared mission, we can connect these organizations to amplify and really, sort of take everybody, bring everybody forward to a new level of productivity, et cetera. So that's the leadership part. And, and sort of reclaiming our place. I don't know if reclaiming is the right word, but as a place, a trusted place to come for information when there's lots of noise out there. And particularly when it comes to leading through a crisis, to be a place where people can come to find reliable information that they might need to overcome whatever situation that they're in. So that's kind of 2 and 4, the community leadership and the community convener part. And then number 3 is the library as a place. And there was a ton of discussion about this in our various venues. And one, some things to call out there, becoming a more experiential and interactive learning environment for users of all ages. So we do, in better times, tons of programming in person. We've got some spaces which I think are sort of models for the community, other places in the community, and certainly for the profession, like the Treehouse Room, for example, which is designed around around brain cognition, early learning, developing motor skills, which tie directly to language development, et cetera. So having more of those spaces in the library where we really kind of take the materials that we have, elevate them to experiences, and make sure that our spaces are amenable to that. Ensure that spaces, to the best of our ability, exist for all types of needs, the spaces within the library and perhaps even outside of the library. And as much as we can, make optimum use of the limited outdoor space that we have, trying to make them as inspiring, inviting, and functional as possible. We, as we're relatively landlocked here. We don't have a lot of green space. We've got a big parking lot. We do have limited green space, and what this is really seeing if there's more that we can do to optimize the use of this space. So some ways that we've done this in the past is we have converted our flower gardens, our plant beds, to vegetable gardens and share the produce with the soup kitchen. And we, for one garden, another garden we've converted to really be a pollinator garden, so to attract bees and butterflies, et cetera. And sort of taking that notion a step further and seeing if there are ways that we can make better use of the very limited outdoor space that we have. So, all right. So any questions about those 4 strategic focus areas?
I just note that there are comparative terms that are used throughout this, like more and better. I assume what that means is we want to move beyond where we are now, in the sense that you were referring to before, that can't be necessarily quantified, but at least can be measured in some way. We can see an impact.
That is correct. It's definitely an aspirational plan, and it really. But you are exactly right, and it is more or better from where we have a sense that we are now.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, I just wanted to note that the facilitators, Janet and Rob, one thing that they said about our library was that it was already in a very, high functioning place already. So a lot of the planning is very aspirational, because we meet a lot of goals, we serve the community at such a high level right now.
Right. And really that is essentially the plan, but we can go through and just to give a notion of, we said that there will be annual work plans that will go along with these sort of high level plans, and to give you an idea of some of the initiatives that we might undertake in service of these goals. So we talked a little bit about outcomes. So here are some of the initiatives. So for accessibility, some of these things are in progress. So upgrade our website to improve the usability and provide more opportunities for engagement. To invest in and expand our outreach services and capabilities, focusing on reaching the parts of our community and the people in those parts of the community with the highest needs and the lowest access in terms of our materials, programs, et cetera. And to sort of begin the process of evaluating the need for additional locations, potentially branches or outposts, particularly in the outlying areas of our service area. So those are probably the things that we'll be focusing on, at least for the first year in terms of initiative. In the leadership area, really visibly setting a positive example of leadership in the areas of sustainability, equity, diversity, and inclusion, community engagement, and innovation. So what that would look like, and we've already done some of this, for sustainability, we have gone through a very lengthy process of auditing our use of materials, auditing some of our policies to become one of the very first libraries in the state to be certified sustainable by the New York Library Association. But taking that a step further and making sure that the community is aware of the efforts that we're taking in the sustainability realm, and not necessarily being satisfied to do the next step and be the educators in the process, and taking the message to the rest of the community. Same thing with equity, diversity, and inclusion. And this is where the community, again, the state, the nation is undergoing something of a reckoning. We've started a process of looking at our policies and our practices and procedures to make sure that we're not throwing up barriers to service. There's a lot more work to be done. And so this commits us. We had a new policy last year. We implemented a policy that committed to doing this, and now it's in our plan that's going to commit us to actually do the work. Some other, that's the main initiative here. So walking the talk and kind of demonstrating the best practices to the community in these areas. Library as a place, some of the priorities here, really take a deep look at the way things are currently laid out within the building, look at how spaces might be adjusted for services we want to provide in the future. Even services that we're providing now, are they given the right amount of space for for what we hope the impact will be? And take a fresh look at the parking lot, which is an ongoing discussion, and continue conversations that we have started with the city about access to the parking lot, about what kind of services are provided there, what the future of that space looks like. Any talk of parking in downtown Saratoga Springs, we know is going to be difficult, but this commits us to taking on that difficult work. And again, taking a good look at the way we use the limited outdoor space that we have. And then as a community convener, some of the initiative here is really looking for new ways to engage users and community in the programming. So in the same way that we've engaged the community in devising this plan, through surveys, through meetings, through focus groups, we use that information when we're developing our programming calendar, for example. So as much as we can, when we're putting our programs together, our collections, our policies, et cetera, get as much input as possible from the community in those processes. Right. And then again, being the convener of the organizations, every organization that we're aware of practically in the city and the state is having similar conversations to ours about issues around equity, diversity, and inclusion. And, and again, sort of leading the way and being a place where those conversations, which can be tricky and can potentially be difficult, being a safe space for those conversations to have.
Like, do you see any significance to the numbering of the 4 areas?
Some of it, Terry, I think is like maybe 1 and 2. I think they're probably in order of the things that we haven't really started to tackle yet, or that we can delve more deeply in. And maybe number 4, convener, gets down here because it's something that we already do. And this may be where the talk of sustainability comes in. Keep on doing the good work here, amplify it, but really put the focus on numbers 1 through 3. Other than that, I don't know that they're necessarily a prioritization. It's just the way they fell out.
So
Is that an answer to your question?
Yeah.
All right.
Ike, we're running into some time constraints. Should we continue this discussion, or do you need anything else? Do you need anything now?
I mean, if you're satisfied, if you are satisfied with this plan, I think it might be a good time to entertain a motion to approve this as our strategic plan for the 2021 to 24 period.
Well, I would make a motion to adopt it as the strategic plan. I don't know if there's a second.
I would second that.
There's a second, Katie? Is that Katie?
I think it looks great, Ike. I mean, there's a lot here that we could spend time talking about all of them, but it's really exciting to see it come to this, sorry, this part of the process. There's so much good stuff in here.
And I have to say, it's only been because it really has been a process, and putting it all together and having an opportunity to kind of articulate it in the way I just did to you with staff for the first time a couple of weeks ago. It really, I agree. I think it is an exciting place. I think we are in an exciting place, and I think there's a lot of hard work ahead of us, but I think it is definitely generating some enthusiasm.
So there's a motion on the floor to accept the strategic plan as reflected in the agenda. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. It's adopted. At this point, we're going to adjourn into an executive session to discuss a particular personnel matter.
Right, and you all have the trustees have the link to that other session, correct?
So, yeah, so we get out of this and
Yep.
link up again. Okay.
All right, great,
Thanks.
thanks.